Have you ever wondered what makes some men great leaders? For example, they're able to deliver amazing results even though they might not have the best technical skills. Or why some men are very good at connecting with their kids or have great relationships with their spouses. Or even at a more basic level, have you ever lost your temper, did something stupid, and then later on once you calm down, you thought to yourself, why did I do that? I know better than that. Well, the answer to all of these questions lies in emotional intelligence. In the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a very quick but very powerful overview that will help you to turn emotions into superpowers that will help you to perform even better in your personal, professional, and spiritual life. My name is Marek Rudak. I have over 3,000 hours of executive coaching at various Fortune 500 companies, startups, nonprofits, and government agencies. I have designed emotional intelligence training for elite organizations such as NASA, Fidelity, and University of St. Thomas. But the main thing I want you to know about me is that emotional intelligence is not just something that I happen to teach. It's something that, quite frankly, helped me to transform my life. Like many of you, I was raised not to value my emotions. I thought of them to be a liability, had to be stuffed down as deep as possible. But emotional intelligence helped me to grow from a very toxic upbringing. My father figure was a very abusive grandfather who did a lot of hurtful things to me. And the sad thing is that as I was growing up, I found myself repeating those same things that my grandfather did to me that hurt me. And that shocked me. And so emotional intelligence helped me to spot those patterns and change those behaviors. Also, emotional intelligence helped me to grow from divorce. I tell you, divorce was one of the hardest things that ever happened to me. And it would be very easy for me to point the finger at my ex-wife. And instead, emotional intelligence helped me take ownership of my own faults, helped me to learn from them. And now I'm super blessed to be married to the love of my life. Also, emotional intelligence helped me to take all these amazing leadership tools and techniques that I learned at West Point, 82nd Airborne, and ExxonMobil, add heart to them and have them pop even more. And then finally, when I first started as a full-time coach, it was very rough, a lot of difficult emotions. And so emotional intelligence helped me to process those emotions. It helped me not quit, learn from my setbacks, learn from my mistakes, and help me to build a thriving business. Nowadays, I'm super blessed to have coached thousands of clients at various organizations. And I tell you, people come to coaching for many different reasons, but at the core of those reasons is a desire to go to the next level. And from my experience, I cannot think of a faster way to get my clients results than emotional intelligence, simply because a lot of times people have heard about emotional intelligence and they intuitively know that this is something that can help them, but they don't know how to put it into practice. And so when they do, they see results really fast because it takes whatever technical skill they have and then elevates it. But by no means, please do not take my word for it. Let's take a look at what stats say. So according to the Center for Creative Leadership, 75% of careers are derailed for reasons related to emotional competencies. I remember one time I was doing a webinar for HR folks, and they told me, no, that can't be right. In our experience, it's 100%. But emotional intelligence is not just something to be avoided. It's also something that distinguishes star performers. And that's in every field, from entry-level jobs to executive positions. The single most important factor is not IQ, and IQ is what measures intelligence, advanced degrees, or technical experience. It is EQ. And EQ is what measures emotional intelligence. And the cool thing about emotional intelligence is that it won't just help you at work. It will also help you at home. So for example, researchers have found that even more than IQ, our emotional awareness and abilities to handle feelings will determine our success and happiness in all walks of life, including family and relationships. Let me share with you a quick story that shows how emotional intelligence helped my client both in professional and personal life. I remember one time I was working with this attorney who went from a law firm in New York City to being an in-house counsel at a utility company. So he went from a very direct, very intense culture to a lot slower, a lot more collaborative culture. And so emotional intelligence helped me to make that transition. But I want to say session 3 or so, out of nowhere, this guy starts crying. And keep in mind, this is a very tough, kind of stereotypical attorney. Out of nowhere, he starts crying. And he says, Marek, through emotional intelligence, I have learned that I treat my daughter differently than my boys. And so emotional intelligence helped him not only be more successful in his professional life and his new career, but also helped him to become a better father. And so that's why I love emotional intelligence. The win-win, it helps people at work and it helps them at home. Let's wrap up by talking about money, because who doesn't like to make more money, right? According to research, for every 1 point increase on your EQ scale, you should expect to be making $1,300 extra in your annual salary. And the cool thing is the people who did this research found it to be true in all industries, all levels, in every region of the world. They have yet to find a job in which performance and pay aren't tied closely to EQ. Emotional intelligence will help us to perform better at work, at home, and oh, by the way, it will also help us make more money. What's not to like? Now, before I talk about what emotional intelligence is, let's talk about what it's not. So first of all, it's not about learning how to become touchy-feely, sing kumbaya. No. Think of it as having two hands. One of them is IQ, one of them is EQ. It's not about which hand is better than the other. It's about the value that we create with both hands that far exceeds the sum of individual components. And what I found is that we typically do not receive emotional intelligence in our formal training at work or at home. And so in a way, it's kind of like going to a fight with one of our hands tied behind our back. So we're gonna change that today. Let me talk about the science behind emotional intelligence, because there's actually science behind it. I remember one time I was talking to this one guy who said, emotional intelligence, isn't that just the latest excuse for Gen Zs not to do their work? No, trust me, there's science behind it. Here's the science. So we experience emotions in the limbic system, which is the center of our brain. And the logical portion of our brain is right behind our forehead, called the prefrontal cortex. How do we know this? Well, we learned this from people who experienced brain injury. So there was this one gentleman named Phineas Gage who had this freak accident where this rod went through his eye, through the prefrontal cortex, and damaged his the rational portion of his brain. 6 months later, he recovered, and in many ways, he was still the same person. For example, his IQ was the same, his personality was the same, but one thing fundamentally changed, which is that because he experienced damage to the rational portion of his brain, every emotion he had exploded into unfettered action. So he went from a manager that everybody loved to somebody who was unreliable, somebody who could not even hold an entry-level job. Now, sometimes people say, Marek, wouldn't it be nice to have some kind of an on and off switch to be able to turn off our emotions whenever we have to make a big decision, as an example? Well, my friends, be careful what you wish for, because there was this gentleman named Elliot who, due to cancer, experienced damage in his limbic system and consequently lost his ability to feel emotions. And because of that, he could not make a choice. Why? Well, if you think about it, without emotions, all choices became equal to him. He did not have the emotional capacity to have a preference for any particular course of action, and that's why he was stuck. Notice how the stimulus travels through our brain. By stimulus, imagine yourself reading a text message or somebody talking to you. The stimulus enters through our spinal cord, then it goes to the limbic system, which again is the center of our brain, and then it finally goes to the prefrontal cortex. Now, the reason why this geography matters is because our brains are wired to give emotions an upper hand. We experience emotions in a split of a second, way before we have an opportunity to decide what we want to do with those emotions in that far front region portion of our brain behind our forehead. Let me give you a few examples of how our brains give emotions an upper hand so that we can connect it to your everyday life. Have you ever done something stupid? For example, let's say somebody said something, you overreacted, and then the next day you thought to yourself, what the heck was I thinking? That's just it! You are not thinking. It's called amygdala hijack, where the stimulus in the limbic system is so strong, so powerful, that it overpowers the rational portion of our brain behind our forehead. And in that moment, we become just like Phineas Gage. Here's a couple of quotes that exemplify very well how our brains are wired to give emotions an upper hand. For example, when we have strong emotions, we're likely to fool ourselves. This is applicable to biases that are negative but also positive. For example, when we are in awe of charismatic leaders, we're much less likely to think about what they're saying and use rational thought to some of the things that might not make sense. But because we have that strong emotional connection with the leader, we're not questioning them. Also, here's a classic from Zig Ziglar. People buy on emotion and justify on logic. I don't know about you, but when I first read that quote, I thought, no way. Yes, I mean, these other idiots, they buy on emotion, but not me. I'm too smart for that. It's true though. Think about an average Super Bowl commercial. Does it talk about features of the product? Does it try to make a rational case to our prefrontal cortex? No. It's all about evoking a strong emotion in our limbic system, because these companies know that we buy on emotion and justify on logic. Okay, so at this point, we're ready for an official definition of emotional intelligence. So if I had to define emotional intelligence in my own words, I would say that it's nothing more then using emotions as a source of information to help us improve relationship with ourselves and others, which in turn helps us to be more successful in our professional and our personal lives. And the coolest thing about emotional intelligence is, and this is why I'm so passionate about it, is that unlike IQ, which is fixed, we all have a number. We're gonna have that number till we die. It doesn't matter what we do. And our personality, which is also fixed. Emotional intelligence is something that everybody can get better at. There's no such thing as perfect score. Everybody can get better. It doesn't matter how low you score. And when you get better, you see results both in your professional and your personal life. And you also see results in your spiritual life. For example, the more we grow in EQ, the more we get to know ourselves. And then from that place, it's a lot easier for us to discern whether we're hearing God's voice or our ego's voice. Also, emotional intelligence helps us to grow in virtue. If you think about it, much of our sin comes from our inability to productively process emotions. There's a lot of ways to teach emotional intelligence. For example, it can get as detailed as the EQI 2.0 model, which is the basis of an assessment that I'm certifying, that I use for my private clients and for workshops that I've done for organizations such as NASA. But for the purposes of an introduction, we're going to use Daniel Goleman's 5 components of emotional intelligence. The first 3 are what's called individual skills, which is how we handle ourselves. So that's self-awareness, self-regulation, and motivation. And then the last 2 are what's called social competencies, which is how we handle our relationships with others, which are empathy and social skills. All right, so here's your first assignment. Think of one moment in this past week where you reacted poorly, i.e. your emotions took over to your detriment. What would the stronger version of you have done? I am super pumped for our journey together. Please feel free to post any thoughts or questions in the comment section. God bless and see you soon.